Welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking something absolutely wild. It's a highly complex, fascinating text called the Five Laws on the Eternity of Life. And what this text does is ambitiously blend quantum theory, natural philosophy, and theology to build this massive, unified framework for cosmic existence. It is quite the ride, so let's just dive right in.
But rather than starting with crazy, complex physics or the macro universe, the text actually hooks us by addressing our deepest, most personal existential fear. It asks a remarkably simple question: am I going to die forever? Because the author totally gets it. We might be intellectually curious about the ultimate fate of the cosmos, sure, but what truly keeps us up at night is the question of our own individual permanence. And to answer this, the text argues we first have to fundamentally redefine what life actually is.
To build this new definition, the author leans on a fascinating quote from Dr. Christopher Langton over at the Los Alamos National Life Laboratory. The main argument here? Physical genes, the DNA we can actually look at under a microscope, are really just an expression of life. They aren't its true essence. Think about it. Humans can engineer incredibly complex physical structures, like a massive spaceship, but we literally cannot manufacture something as structurally simple as a living ant from scratch. Why is that? Well, the text suggests it's because true life is a form. It's a blueprint that exists totally independent of the physical material that just so happens to temporarily fill it.
Okay, so according to this framework, this non-material structure is the precise difference between a living being and a dead, inanimate object. If life were just a specific arrangement of physical matter, then by definition, a manufactured bicycle or a wooden desk would be alive, right? But they aren't. What separates you and me from a wooden desk is that our underlying non-material structure possesses spirituality and consciousness.
All right, now that we've nailed down what life actually is, the theory zooms way, way out. It asks the ultimate question: what is the universe and why does it even exist? If human societies create legal and political systems specifically to serve humanity, what is the vast, mind-boggling order of the entire universe actually designed to do?
The text argues it's a perfectly symbiotic, completely unbreakable relationship. It claims the universe exists exclusively to serve life. It's not just some giant empty void that happens to contain living things by total accident. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a purposeful system meticulously engineered to sustain them. The framework dictates that if the universe were to perish, life would end. But equally, and this is key, if life were to die out, the universe itself would simply vanish. They're basically two interlocking pieces of the exact same cosmic puzzle.
So check out the dynamic symmetry the author describes. It's structured a lot like a Taiji diagram, and this architecture is holographically reflected from a single microscopic cell all the way up to the entire cosmos. On one extreme, you have heavenly realms, places like the Zero World or the Elysium World. On the exact symmetrical opposite, you have hellish realms, like the inflamed or frozen layers. And sitting precisely in the middle, acting as this critical balancing interface between these two immense polarities, is our world, the mortal world. To keep this whole massive symmetrical system from just completely collapsing, there absolutely must be balance. And the text brilliantly anchors this abstract cosmic idea using a corporate analogy we can all relate to. Imagine a company. You've got one general manager, a few division managers, maybe 50 people in sales, and hundreds working on the front line. If you suddenly promote 90 people to upper management and leave exactly one person to do all the actual work on the front line, well, the company goes under. The universe works the exact same way. Universal balance requires very specific allocations of energy: a massive amount of flora and fauna, a moderate amount of humans, and a very small amount of beings in the highest heavenly realms.
And looking at Earth's water cycle perfectly illustrates how that balance is actually maintained. Cosmic symmetry isn't rigid, it's incredibly fluid. Take Earth's water, for instance. The vast majority of it sits in the oceans, while just a tiny, tiny fraction flows in our rivers and lakes. But for the Earth to survive, that water can't just sit there stagnant. It has to evaporate, rain down, flow, and constantly cycle through the whole system. Similarly, life in the universe must rapidly cycle and flow between all these symmetrical realms we just talked about to maintain a dynamic cosmic equilibrium.
So you might be wondering, what actually governs all this flow? According to the source, it's governed by an impartial universal morality. Now, in this framework, this isn't just some human invention or philosophical idea. It's literally a foundational law of physics. Dispensing reward and punishment based on a being's spiritual frequency ensures that the energy flows to the exact right places. Without this mechanical, cosmic system of reaping what you sow, the dynamic balance would be totally lost and the universe would just fall out of order.
But wait, this brings up a massive logical loophole, right? If the universe requires perfectly balanced symmetry and energy is constantly cycling like water, then why on Earth does the human population keep growing? 20 years ago it was 5 billion, and now we're soaring way past 7 billion. Doesn't that prove the amount of life is a variable that's just spiraling out of control?
Well, the author tackles this head-on by arguing that life's total cosmic quantity is in fact a rigidly fixed constant. So where are all these new people coming from? You have to look at the broader picture. While the human population is increasing rapidly, animal populations across the globe are drastically decreasing. The text suggests that the quote-unquote extra humans appearing on Earth aren't being created out of thin air. Instead, they're being mysteriously transmigrating through that fluid system from other realms, maybe from animal forms, from heaven, or from hell, moving right into our mortal interface. To justify this whole transmigration idea between different species, the theory asks us to look past physical appearances. Remember earlier? The text established that the essence of life is its non-material structure, and structurally the source claims we are all remarkably similar. For instance, the non-material structural difference between a human and a gorilla is presented as a mere 0.1%, which, let's be honest, might explain a lot about rush hour traffic. Between a human and a rabbit, it's just 0.2%. Even the structural differences between ordinary people and deeply spiritual figures like Jesus or Buddha are tiny, even though those microscopic differences create vastly different qualities of life.
Okay, but if we accept the text's premise that the total quantity of life in the universe is strictly capped and constant, we have to ask a very modern question. What about cloning? Can scientists artificially increase life? Does cloning a sheep mean we've injected brand new life into a closed system?
Well, the text issues a pretty stark warning here. Because a clone being perfectly replicates the physical blueprint, it does indeed pull consciousness into it. However, by bypassing the natural cosmic cycle of reward and punishment, cloning acts as a forced shortcut, and the universe does not like shortcuts. It destroys the symmetrical energy balance, which the author claims will inevitably invite global catastrophe if it's left unchecked. Which naturally leads us to ask how this strict cosmic limit was established in the very first place. The author outlines a pretty epic creation timeline. First, it begins with the birth of the greatest creator. Next, in the creation phase, we see the forming of gods and angels. Third, these angels supposedly engineered humans. But this sudden influx created a massive cosmic imbalance. So finally, to rebalance the scales, the creator had to execute sweeping extinctions, permanently capping the total number of lives and establishing the symmetrical realms of heaven and hell to absorb all that energy. Now, what's really fascinating here is how the text draws a parallel between the ultimate goals of modern science and the goals of the divine. Think about it. Just as human scientists are tirelessly working to establish a unified field theory to explain all physical phenomena in the universe harmoniously, the text suggests the divine forces are working to establish a unified perspective theory. The core argument is that for the cosmos to remain balanced, all our valid yet fractured belief systems must eventually compromise and blend into a single, unified cosmic harmony. Central to this whole indestructible framework is the concept of the Tao. The text defines Tao as the psychic energy of the Creator, acting quite literally as the blood and vitality of the universe itself. It flows through all material and non-material things. Because our individual lives are inherently attached to this eternal flowing energy, the source argues that our individual spiritual essence is physically incapable of being destroyed. You can absolutely destroy the physical vessel, sure, but you cannot destroy the life that is attached to the Tao. To prove this, the author asks us to do a quick thought experiment about deconstructing matter. Imagine taking a physical human germ cell and zooming in. You hit the molecular level, then the atomic. Go even further and you enter the weird world of quantum mechanics. Go further still, you hit superstring theory. The text argues that if you keep pushing past the very limits of physical reality, you eventually hit non-material spirit and consciousness. And because this absolute base layer is entirely non-material, it simply doesn't have the capacity to physically decay or disappear. And all of this builds up to the author's grand reveal. The 5 laws on the eternity of life. Let's recap. 1. The universe itself is eternal. 2. Universal morality is eternal. 3. Life fluidly transmigrates. 4. The psychic energy of the Tao lives forever. And 5. Non-material structures are eternal. Which brings us to the final definitive takeaway of the entire text. Life is eternal.
Whether you view this through the lens of near-death experiences, deep quantum theory, or complex cosmological theology, the source builds a really fascinating interconnected case for immortality. We've explored a universe where energy cycles, structures persist, and life is literally the fundamental purpose of existence. It leaves us with a pretty profound question to chew on. If your essence truly is a permanent fixture of this cosmic architecture, and you will quite literally live forever, how does that change the way you live your life today? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning and keep learning.